So Cowboy Bebop has been canceled.
Cowboy Bebop has been canceled.
In the
The
short
live
time
action one.
when we started this show, which was pretty recently, um, Cowboy Bebop, the live action show, had just come out basically, and we watched it. We talked about it. Being kind of this mixed bag that couldn't really live up to its predecessor, but wasn't necessarily all bad, and you
Yeah.
know, just went through a lot of different
A lot
things
of
about
emotion.
that in the very short time since then. Cowboy Bebop just came out. When was it? A month ago,
Uh,
tops.
I
A
can
few
actually
weeks
look that up.
ago.
I'll get back to you on that.
I know it was still pretty freaking new when we watched it and talked about it here.
November 19th, 2021.
This came out November 19th. It's December 13th. Less than a month later, it's already been canceled.
Yep. It
They're
is.
they're not even giving it like much room to breathe. It really feels like did they even intend for this to work?
It doesn't seem like it. It seems like they set themselves up for failure. I don't know. There was a lot of stuff lacking in this Cowboy Bebop that a lot of people said was just not there from the original series, which is unfortunate. But like that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, and there were a lot
Sometimes
of changes.
adaptations don't live up to it.
There were a lot of changes. There were a lot of differences. It was a very weird thing to do in the first place, and it just seems so much stranger to be the people to finally revive it, put all of this effort into it, lots of like at least somewhat relatively name brand people involved with it, actors, director, etc. Like all this money, all this effort goes into it, and then you just cancel it almost instantly.
Yeah, and I feel like when that happens, it feels like you didn't even give it a chance. But here's the thing,
Yeah, like
though.
was their goal for it to fail?
Well, here's the thing. I feel like live action adaptations of these shows that they're doing aren't necessary. And all in all, like it doesn't seem like I mean, like it's enjoyable to watch for such a short interim, but I'm not going to remember this in a year. I'm not going to
No,
remember
it
this.
was a novelty.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
especially now that it's gone, it's even more of a novelty.
but is that the fear of missing out? FOMO or whatever they call it?
I mean, to an extent, it could be a little bit of FOMO that just even caused me to watch it. Not gonna lie, but also, yeah, no, I think just like there was like, I don't. It's like Cowboy
Okay.
Bebop was this huge thing, and here it is. Finally, all these years later, someone's finally doing something new with it. I wanted to see what it was, you
Sure.
know, but it just seemed like I said, it just seems like the studio. I don't know what the deal is. Part of what sucks about all this too is that Cowboy Bebop, the original, was a very episodic show.
Indeed. And like you could follow it and you would enjoy it.
Yeah.
Um
Whereas this new show was like everything else, it was trying to set all these things up, and then of course now it's just like every question is just gonna go unanswered.
yeah. I do have one answer for a question you had earlier. Like why didn't this work? It's because Japanese anime is not meant for live action. is something I'm realizing.
I agree to an extent, but I don't think that it absolutely has to be exclusive like that. Like, I think that there's a lot of difficulty in translating something that was animated to live action, because a lot of animated things, why did they choose that medium? It's because they wanted to do something extraordinarily fantastic, right? Like something unusually wondrous and like creative in that kind of way, where it's like, I mean, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which we talked about on this show a couple week and a half ago, is a great example of something that like the ideas are so wondrous and so extraordinary that the idea of trying to translate that into a live action seems incredibly hard, right?
Yeah.
Because like it's just like these ideas are so big. And I think one of the real problems is that what tends to get adapted, it's the most popular shit, right? Well, what's the most popular animated shit? It tends to be really fantastical shit, right? So like the most popular animes of all time include things like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Gundam, crazy shit like Trigun, One Piece, Cowboy Bebop, obviously. Like all of these shows that are like really over the top and zany and fantastical, like I keep saying. Like, how do you make One Piece live action? People like turn into like rubber and
But at the same time, you could
gas
do
and all
it.
kinds of stuff.
You could do it with Lupin the Third. I'm just saying.
Well, that's part of my point, is that okay,
There's
so
certain ones you could do it with, but they have to be in a specific category that is not fantastical, magical, or mystical, in my opinion.
I would say somewhat, yeah, I agree somewhat with that statement. Yeah, like I think Lupin the Third is definitely a good example of something that it's not as popular, so it hasn't really been done in that way as far as I know. Maybe there is, though. It's a very popular show. There might be a live action adaptation.
There might be, actually. I heard about something. I saw something on Amazon. Like, I remember seeing something in the background. Pretty sure it was a live action that was coming out when we were still watching Lupin before. The old Lupin series. Can I circle back to something, by the way?
Yeah, of course.
For a second. So I realized something. I remember this whole thing about Keanu Reeves, like supposedly about to play Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop, and there was supposed to be like a live action movie. I think it was like 2008 was when it was. I'm pretty sure. Let me check. Let me double check this.
Yeah, there's been a few attempts to make the live action Cowboy Bebop.
But here's the thing. I would have rather seen that, the abandoned version of that, with Keanu like quitting halfway through or whatever. I would have rather seen that than this. I feel like.
I don't know. I feel like another problem is that I think you can't one-to-one translate types of over-the-top sorts of behavior or visuals or things like that from anime to live action. I think that's another really big problem. Is I think you can't one-to-one translate these things. Like one of the biggest problems with the live action Cowboy Bebop was Ed, which was just like this poorly thought out, like you're really trying to sort of copy and paste this character that worked in an animated setting into live action without giving enough thought to it. And so the result is something that doesn't feel the same because you can't one-to-one translate a lot of things, right?
Yeah. I get that.
I think
Okay.
that's like a huge issue. Even like Lupin the Third, a lot of Lupin's character expressions and actions and stuff are so over the top and so like sort of, I don't know, fantastical and strange, and like and these like things that they do are so larger than life that some of that could be a struggle to translate to real life again if you're literally trying to do it 1-to-1.
But here's the thing. It's literally, I feel like it's literally just Hollywooded up Japanese anime.
Usually, but not always.
But not always. But like with
Yeah.
Lupin,
But
I
with
feel like the races, not like as in the people, I mean like as in the actual car races.
car chases. I figured
Sorry,
that's
just
what you
needed to
meant.
clarify that. I don't know why. But other than that, I'd say the car races, the guns, the watches, like the way they zoom in on Jigen's watches sometimes. Like the show is really about like the natural beauty of their environment as well, because the artist is amazing.
Yeah.
So that would have to translate over to the live action.
And again, I think if you try to just do it 1-to-1, try to just literally port over Lupin the Third, I don't think it'll necessarily work. I think if you take the ideas of Lupin the Third and then you translate that into its own form of live action zaniness, because like here's the thing, okay, Lupin the Third is like a very zany show. You could do zany in real life, but it doesn't look the same. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is a good example of like a zany live action show.
Almost slapsticky. Like, I get what you're saying, like almost vaudeville in a way.
Yeah, sometimes, or it's just, I don't know, it's just different. Like when you do something there's things that you can get away with in animated medium that don't feel as silly, but will feel way sillier if you bring the live action, is I guess another simpler way to put it. Like a good example would be
the actor to find a way to translate that. The job of the actor and the director.
Somewhat, but also like to give an example, I feel like there are some things that there's just like suspension of disbelief that we give to animated stuff that's a little bit different. So like in Lupin the Third, for instance, we sometimes see the characters like be in like an explosion.
Yeah.
And we're just like, and then they come out of it and we're just okay with that. And it doesn't make it feel far sillier for something like that to happen. And it doesn't take away from the idea that there could be serious consequences in this show sometimes.
Well, I mean, you got to remember in Castle Cagliostro, when Lupin gets blown up or whatever, or catches on fire with all those burns, and he has to like basically heal himself. Like they go through that montage.
Yeah, sometimes they do take it seriously.
And overeating. That felt really real to me. I don't know why, because it like certain. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you're just like, I need to get better like right now, otherwise like I'm screwed. It really translated to me. I don't know why. I've been in situations where like I'm down bad and I'm sick and I just need to like get better, and I just need to heal up before a fight or something, like before a boxing match, and I'm just piling down food and I'm wrapped up and I'm just thinking, oh God, I gotta get past this cold, or I gotta get through this or whatever, just to get back on the mat. Like it's a drop. Lupin shows like a real natural form of life in a very abstract way, I feel. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think it still manages, it can do that, it can do all of that, and then also they can do something goofy and cartoonish where someone lives through something that they absolutely should not.
Yeah.
and
I mean,
just gets off scot-free and doesn't have to deal with the consequences. Like
yeah.
in that animated world, they're able to blend that more easily of like the consequences exist sometimes and other times they don't. And it's just easier in general, like I said, for people to accept that in an animated world.
Yeah.
There
I
are
totally understand.
exceptions. For instance, like the Power Rangers is actually a pretty good example of something that like people kind of accept there sometimes being serious consequences and other times not at all with no real explanation, you know? Because the
It's
goofiness of that show kind of justifies it, but it's really hard to justify that in live action. Whereas like, you know, other times like you'll watch these like live action adaptations of things where someone's like holding the dynamite and they go, uh-oh, and it blows up in their face and it's like a real life person doing this and it feels stupid as hell and it makes the
yeah.
idea that anything could be serious in this movie impossible.
Yeah. It feels like oh God, I just had such a weird thought. What if are there any live actions that have been translated to Japanese anime? Like the opposite way that these are happening.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's been quite a few, especially if you count like books that have been done as live action many times, but
Like
then were brought.
nonfiction, of course, but like
Well, no,
done.
fiction too. I mean, like the Count of Monte Cristo is a good example
Okay.
of something that, like, you know, famously adapted many times in the West, but also has been adapted into a really psychedelic anime.
It's just kind of interesting to think about. I don't know why. Like, is it weird over there, like it is over here? Like, is the
Well, it's not
same
even
reaction
just
happening?
it's not even just crossing of cultures, actually. I mean, think about this. All the time, they try to do animated spin-offs of shows with varying success.
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
that's a common theme that has gone on for literally
Years.
generations now. Is
People
that
need
if
new
there's
content. Give me original content, please. Like,
I know,
I
right?
need the OC tag.
That's like the theme of today's episode a little bit, but not exactly, but
It's kind of just a little bit.
so far. But yeah, like people will try to spin off animated versions of things. And like, do you remember that animated Trailer Park Boys?
Oh God,
That shit
yeah,
was awful.
that shit was so bad.
And I
I don't
understood
know
why they tried to do it to some extent, but also
why though.
like
No, I don't. I don't. Why? Why? Tell me. Like,
because they've been
actually.
doing Trailer Park Boys for a bazillion years and they're tired and some of the actors have literally died or things like that. And like
One has died.
but still he's one of the most important ones.
I mean, they use his fucking ghost in like the other part of the series, so it's just like, why would you think this was okay to do? After I don't know. R.I.P. Not gonna lie, but like, you should have just stopped the show at that season. Not done anymore, and like,
yeah, like
you use sound clips of the guy in a cartoon,
um
and I
I was
bet
also
you
gonna
they
say
didn't
some
even
other
pay his fucking family. I
some
bet you they didn't.
well they might have actually because you know his daughter's on the show.
Oh, really? I
You
didn't
didn't know
know she
that?
was still on the show. Like, I thought she had quit too.
Well, I know some people quit. That's the other thing is they lost some cast. So I understand why they were like trying to find a different way to continue it rather than blatantly continue it with like a half a new cast, you know? Because like that could be awkward in its own right. And so like I think it was a bold and in some ways like kind of interesting choice to try to move things in a different direction through like making the animated version, but it sucked. It was crap. So Trailer Park Boys, the animated series,
Not worth it. Don't
Garbo.
watch it.
And that's it. I mean, that
That's
is a
my opinion.
show that is very cartoonish in a lot of ways in its live action version. So you could see the potential for translating that into animated into some ways, but it didn't work. So I don't even think you have to cross cultures for this to be challenging. I think that it's a lot of the things that work in one medium just don't work in the other.
Actually, wait, hold up. They did that with another Canadian show.
Oh,
Letterkenny.
Letterkenny. God, that's even worse.
That was bad. That was bad, Hulu. Whoever
That
created
shit made
that,
me angry. That shit made me question whether or not I like or trust the creator of Letterkenny.
I don't anymore. I can't. I'm sorry. Like, it's over. Our time together is done. See you later. I never went back to that show after seeing like the first episode of that animated series, and I was just like, "This is trash. Who did this?" It was good for a while. Then it got a little introspective there in the later seasons. Spoilers. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, our goal wasn't to just debate whether or not things can be taken from animation to live action or vice versa all day, because we've done a little of that before, and we also had a different thing we wanted to discuss, which is that, so as I mentioned very early in the episode, Cowboy Bebop leaves behind just a raft of unanswered questions now that the live action version has been canceled. Like, you thought the original show left you with some
This is worse than The Sopranos.
dissatisfied.
Where, like, you just had a black screen at the end. This is just blatant.
And of course, I mean, it's very ironic that Netflix, the production company that once saved Arrested Development, is now known for starting new shows and then canceling them immediately.
Maybe Netflix started cancel culture.
Hey, we got a question from the comments. What do you guys think of the idea that production entities go to animation because it quote unquote costs less? I think that's a complicated thing because it can cost less sometimes. It can also cost more.
Yeah, depending on the artists, the editors, like the writers.
The general cost of the live action show in the first place. Like, for instance, a show like Cheers mostly took place in one bar, notoriously had relatively low production costs compared to a lot of other shows of its time, which is one of the reasons it was able to run for so damn long, is because the overhead was low. And yes, it was popular, but also, even as its popularity waned, they didn't have to worry about, can we afford to keep making this show during some slow times, because most of it takes place in one fucking location. Like, you know,
we don't need to rent out new locations. We own the building.
Yeah, like we go to the bar and then we go to somebody's apartment. Okay, that's the whole episode.
It's all filmed in one location, which is that's like the most brilliant. That's the most brilliant
but it's a lot of it is one location. Yeah,
like,
so I think, you know, production costs vary, and I think ultimately, though, I think why a lot of people switch to it is because of specific costs and specific requirements. So Greenhouse Gaslighting says, I kind of feel like Netflix will always keep new things coming out so that they can stay relevant, but once they get their return on investment, any project is worth folding to them. Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, they, you know, being able to say, hey, we're bringing back Cowboy Bebop was great press for Netflix. Even if ultimately it didn't work out, it was this exciting thing that they were able to talk about for a long time before it came out. And even if some of the press was controversial, they were fine with that to some extent, because it was still like people were curious. It was going to entice people to watch, you know?
Yeah.
Like us, you know, we just had to know. Would we have watched it otherwise? That's a complicated question, you know? And or would we have even like watched a Netflix show at that time otherwise, right? Like, we could have been watching something on Hulu at that time slot. Oh, it's all competitive now. So, you know,
so much competition, so many streaming platforms that you have to pay for with individual payments for absolutely no reason. Sorry. Little.
But what really sucks about this shit, again, like I said, was getting at, is that every show now has to be complex as fuck. And so that makes the Netflix model even more frustrating. Because if Netflix was just cranking out episodic, light, like filler shows more, and they do
Like
a
Gilmore
few of
Girls?
these, but if they were doing more stuff like that, you wouldn't care when that gets canceled that much, right? Like some of their more lighthearted shows, when they come and go, it doesn't make as much of an impression on people, not necessarily because nobody watched it or liked it, but because it was just like a show that you don't, when it ends, it's just like, oh, okay, whatever. We don't hang out with this family anymore. Like, what was that? Like The Range or whatever, that like weird ass show that was like about the like kind of Midwest country family, and it had Ashton Kutcher in it.
Oh, with
And
Sam Elliott and them? Yeah.
like,
Oh, I was so mad. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
like
The Range. That's the name of it.
a lighthearted show like that, it may be trash, that a lot of people like sort of, critically panned, and you can dunk on it all day, but that was a show that Netflix, kind of quietly said later, hey, we made lots of money off that show. It wasn't very expensive to produce, and people watched it. And also, again, like, you can just start and end a show like that whenever, and people aren't as attached to when it comes and goes.
I mean, I'm still waiting for, like, I still want somebody to pick up Longmire. I'm not gonna lie, because Longmire came from AMC and then got picked up by Netflix, and then Netflix dropped them, and they're supposed to have like 2 more seasons. And Grace and Frankie, that's the other one that's really great, and just funny. And it's
Did
Jane
they just
Fonda
cancel that out of the
and-
blue?
What?
Did they just cancel that out of the blue?
They haven't canceled it. It's just they're so slow. They're backing up their like episode plans and stuff like too much.
To be fair, every actor on Grace and Frankie is like 80, so that probably
I
doesn't
mean,
help.
that's fair, but like at the same time, they are amazing, and I want to see more of it. Like I like those shows, and I want to see more of Longmire because that actor is Australian and he has like a Midwest accent, and it's crazy to me. Like, and Lou Diamond Phillips in that is fantastic. Like, I don't know. There's certain shows that I watch for the actors, and then I would find out, like, I actually watched this for the writing. I watched this for like the cinematic purpose because like it's so beautiful. It's like something out of the mind of Sam Elliott or something.
Yeah. So I certainly don't want to suggest that this would fix all of the problems with Netflix or television.
There's a lot
anything,
of problems with Netflix,
but I think it would be a lot less irritating to me as a consumer of media if they would stop trying to make every show into fucking Twin Peaks. Like, not everything has to be a 10-layer lasagna of mystery that, never gets unraveled because it gets canceled at the end of its second season. I mean, Twin Peaks set the model. We never got answers to a lot of things in Twin Peaks until a million decades later. And then we still never got answers to some things because David Lynch is an asshole. I love him, but so
the other one that's good is Riverdale or whatever. That's but it's like Archie. It's like grown up Archie. It's so weird.
Good, but then it loses the fucking plot. Let's be real. The
I
first
know,
season
but,
was a pretty solid mystery.
It went up so well, and then all of a sudden somebody decided to fuck something up. And that's the same thing that happens with Netflix. Some producer gets involved that shouldn't be there. Or like somebody in corporate said something.
It's this need for everything to be a new universe, everything to be like a new like thing with lore and potential for spin-offs and blah blah. It's like, if you're not pitching a show that has potential for spin-offs baked into it, then Netflix doesn't really want to make it.
That's why I
And-
wanted Futurama to come back. God
And
damn it.
that's stupid. Not everything needs to potentially have like 3 or 4 or 5 spin-offs and side shows, and oh, what about this character and blah blah blah. Like, Better Call Saul is okay, and I love Bob Odenkirk to death. He's incredible. But like,
Oh,
that
yeah.
show did not really need to exist.
No, it didn't. It didn't launch his career either. Like, people
No.
always say that's what launched his career. No, it wasn't.
He's been successful for a long time
He's been successful
already.
for so long. You guys just haven't fucking thought about him. Like,
Yeah, like what? Stupid. But we don't need a spin-off of everything. Some things do truly deserve it, in my opinion. Like, some things actually kind of need that, like, let's have some more, let's see some more angles of it.
Word.
Even
wanna
like,
see
I'm
more
not a
kind of
big
thing.
Game of Thrones fan, but I can understand why they're trying to make more spin-offs of Game of Thrones, because there's all these unanswered questions of in the history and this stuff. And so,
Read the books.
like, well, even with the books though, like they're planning to do some series that like dive into things that aren't even really covered in the books, you know, from like the history of the world and
Oh,
stuff. And I'm not a
okay.
big Game of Thrones fan. I watched it for a good while, but then ultimately soured on it. But I can understand why you would take that show in particular and say, yeah, let's look at some more things, right? Star Wars is another great example where you can understand why they keep making Star Warses to some extent, because it's just like, yeah, there's a lot to explore there. You know, there's a lot of different interests that could possibly be met. And even if some of them suck, you always have things come out like that new anime Star Wars series with a bunch of different anime studios doing different episodes. That one's pretty good, you know? And like explores the universe in all these fun ways. And sometimes things justify that. Other times it's like your show is about like a drunk detective, and now there's 3 spin-offs about like his drunk friends, and it's just like, shut the fuck up. Like, not
you just
everything
reminded
needs
me.
to be a universe.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
Go ahead. What do you got?
sorry. Speaking of like live action and animation coming together, holy shit, Happy. That is a series that turned out really good, and it's about a drunk detective who's trying to get his life together, but like he sees this fictional character that is his daughter's like imaginary friend. Spoilers. And it's amazing. Like, it actually turned out really well, and the lead actor always plays him like this character. He always plays this character, but it just works. Like, this whole series, it made me want to keep watching. It made me want to find out who was actually the culprit. And now that it's on to this new season, I think they're going to cancel it after this new season because like the writers changed or something. I don't know what happened, but like they thought they got too big for their boots. Like, for some reason, somebody in the writers department thought, okay, this is my time to shine. And no, it wasn't. It was really not your time to shine. You did something wrong. You wrote something wrong, or you did something wrong. I don't know what happened. I'm not going to blame
once again, they're taking, it sounds to me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're taking a relatively simple show that just kind of worked, and now they're making it more complex.
Too complex, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Who needs this many layers? This is more than a parfait, more than an onion. Why do I need this many layers? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my rant.
I think this is a good comment. My own theory is that people who like shows / properties that are lore heavy are a kind of fan that producers view as reliable, profitable because of their deep time and money investment in the thing. I think that's actually a pretty decent theory about why. I mean, yeah, like, you know, Netflix wants every new show to be something that they can make Funko Pops out of. To put
That's
it
fair.
bluntly, you know.
Do they own Funko Pops?
No, but
That'd
but
be
you
that'd be
want
brilliant.
to make shows. I mean, think about Star Wars fans. There are Star Wars fans that have whole rooms of their house full of display cases with like action figures and memorabilia and posters and stuff like that. Like
That's true.
every production company wants to create those people, and they're trying so hard to engineer it that they miss the mark a lot, because you can't just constantly engineer fandom and expect it to work. Like fandom is this thing that only really works like that if there's some organic aspect to it. Now, it could be still largely astroturfed and created by like money and branding and these things, but like part of why the Star Wars fandom works is why they get together. They've had conventions since like the beginning, right? Same thing for Star Trek, right? It's like you have these fan bases that like do things together, you know?
But it's
And like
almost like a cult.
sometimes, but that's another aspect. But the point is that like they want to engineer something that can only happen if people actually decide to socially engage with the product. Like, and I mean that in a significant way, not just some tweets. Like, you know, people tweeting about your show for a few weeks is the minimum. That just means that people saw your show, right?
Yeah.
But like, if you want to like create like a community around your media product that will like last for a long time and like create its own like things and like do its own stuff, that's a lot harder. And that's what you really need if you want an actually strong fandom that supports something like Star Wars being made for 4 decades or 5 or however many fucking, you know. And I think that's part of what they're missing too, is like you can't just keep trying to forcibly engineer a fandom for fucking everything.
That's the thing, is I feel like they get started on the merch before they get started on the actual movie.
Right.
It's weird.
Like shows like ours, we're deliberately just like making the show for a while, just seeing how it goes, learning, developing an audience, making friendships, like doing all this stuff before we even think about, like, we don't have any merch plans yet. Like, we would like to make merch, but we don't know what it will be at this point.
Yeah, I have no idea.
You know, no, they're starting like with the merch. And to be fair, occasionally that works out. He-Man is a great example of this.
Oh my goodness. I knew we were going to talk about this one today.
The original He-Man was a smash hit cartoon, which is why it's had all these weird reboots and stuff.
Well, it was at the perfect time as well. Like Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah,
Come
Saturday
on.
morning cartoons. It was an unexpected smash hit show, and it was literally developed from action figures. Like, they started with drawings and action figures and concept art and comic books that they wanted to sell.
Yeah.
And then they made a show out of it, and it worked. I don't know if you've ever watched the original He-Man cartoon, but it's pretty fun.
It's pretty great.
Stupid, and often the budget shows and clumsy, but it's fun. It's a totally fun thing to watch, and you can see why kids would have just eaten it up, especially like if you compare it to some other shows at the time that sucked way, way, way worse.
I'm kind of remembering a tad bit of racism in one of the episodes, but I'm not sure if that's still on the air. Like, it was a long time ago.
There's like a blackface episode or something, right?
Yeah, there's a blackface episode. I'm pretty sure.
Back then, everything had a blackface episode. You had to have one. I'm not justifying it. I'm just making a joke. I just want to be clear. I'm not trying to justify it in any way. I'm just making a joke about those times in media. Just an honest statement.
We're covering our bases today.
We're covering all our bases today.
Original content and covering your bases. Those are the 2 lessons for today at Velvet Butcher Shop. By the way, check out our Patreon.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's been obvious from me ranting about this off and on for the better part of 40 minutes so far, but I'm tired of every show trying to be extraordinarily high concept. You know, the 7 layers sundae of mystery every single episode. I'm over it to a large extent. You know what I've been watching recently that I adore, as I've been rewatching Murder, She Wrote. And I wish more shows could be like this. Honestly, Murder, She Wrote, you can watch 1 episode or 10. It's your choice.
I grew up on that shit. All right.
It's an amazing show. It's really, truly one of my favorite shows of all time. Doesn't quite beat JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
I want to go to Cabot Cove, baby.
I don't. Cabot Cove's murder rate is insane. That is a really small town canonically. And like for the amount of murders that go there, you're safer in like south side of Chicago.
For real. Like the murder rate, it's steep. Like those cliffs at Cabot Cove.
That is a small town in Maine where you go to die.
It's not a retirement community, it's a retirement. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know about going to Cabot Cove. But
I kind of do want to go. I'm not gonna lie, because I'd just like to see where her house was, or like where they filmed it. Like it's supposed to be beautiful. Like I feel like the whole place is just picturesque.
The filming locations have a lot of that quaint charm that certain places in the United States do. Let's
rent an Airbnb and go, Kennedy.
Let's go. Yeah, we'll do some episodes from.
Could I have Maine. A road trip up there? Dear God.
Oh, we're gonna drive? Oh, I guess. I do hate flying.
I'll pick you up.
Okay. Let us know in the comments if you want us to go to Maine and do some episodes at historic Murder, She Wrote locations.
Oh God.
But yeah, Murder, She Wrote, amazing show.
Honestly, yeah. Amazing cast, amazing like storyline. You didn't have to fucking. You could come into that halfway through a season and be completely fine.
You could show someone
you wouldn't know.
Any episode of Murder, She Wrote. It's fine.
Yeah.
The very first 2 episodes, it's a 2-part mystery, vaguely establishes that she's a writer. But if you didn't know that and you just figured it out through the context clues, you would be fine.
Exactly.
Like, you don't have to know that part of the story. But one thing about shows like that, and this ties back to Cowboy Bebop actually a little bit. One thing about shows like that is they knew how to develop characters over time without making a big deal about it. So if you watch a lot of Murder, She Wrote, you'll learn a lot about Jessica Fletcher and like the residents of the small town where she lives, Cabot Cove, and some of her family members and things like that. Like there are these reoccurring characters who come back over and over again. You'll learn things about them, but it's not like this involved thing where it's like, you know, if they were making Murder, She Wrote now, they would start it off with like her dead husband, what happened to him, and then she would every few episodes she'd find some clue about her dead husband, instead of it just being this part of her backstory that is just this thing that isn't mentioned a whole heck of a lot, but every now and again you remember, oh yeah, she's grieving.
Successful
still.
Mystery writer. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She once did like some schooling for her students and like taught writing to her students at one point.
Yeah.
That's what happens later on, but like that's how they kept it going. Like
Yeah.
it was brilliant. It was a great idea, and it worked.
And why I brought up Cowboy Bebop is that the original Cowboy Bebop was actually kind of like this for the most part. It was very episodic, and a lot of the episodes taught you a little bit about your main characters, but ultimately there wasn't a lot of like underlying mystery that was driving the season forward. You just kept watching because it was an enjoyable show and you liked the characters. And ultimately, like a lot of people thought that like the main underlying plot that ultimately leads to Spike's death at the end wasn't that great. Like people don't tend to look at that as the best part of the show necessarily a lot, you know? Some people like it, but a lot of people, even big fans of the show, don't necessarily think that that's the best part.
That's fair.
And so
It's not the best death.
what do we have with the live action Cowboy Bebop? Oh, we have the 10-layer mystery lasagna again. What's inside?
want a
You
piece of
have
that.
to eat it to find out. Except actually, after 3 bites, I'm taking your plate away, and then you don't get any more.
What? Give me that back. Come back here. I need that. My knowledge. I feel like, yeah, that's kind of how it feels. Is like somebody is. I was supposed to eat a full piece of lasagna, and you gave me 3 bites and then took it away. Told me it was poisoned. Why'd you give me poison lasagna, Netflix?
Why'd you give me poison lasagna, Netflix?
Why'd you do it?
Why are you doing it to us like this?
I feel like if somebody was to reboot Murder, She Wrote, I would want it canceled immediately because you don't do Angela Lansbury like that. The lady deserves better.
If you were gonna you would have to really put some effort in to try to reboot that show in any way that wouldn't just viscerally offend me. And
real.
also, furthermore, it doesn't need it because again, like the show didn't set itself up in this way that left behind some big unanswered question that
It
we
still
blah
holds
blah
up.
need the answer to. And you know what? When we get those answers, we're never satisfied anyway most of the time. Like, think about the X-Files reboot. Very mediocre, you know, kind of fun to watch, but ultimately, like, their attempt to, like, answer some of the big questions from before sucked for the most part and was not that great. So,
So I guess that's another lesson of today is to be okay with not knowing the answers.
You don't need the answer to everything. Or also don't leave a million fucking unanswered questions in your show. Like the X-Files, famously great show, but its last few seasons, messy, weird.
Yeah.
Just keep leaving you with more questions than answers and frustrating you and you know, just weird shit. And so that's part of why the X-Files left on this, you know, note of so many unanswered questions is because of the weird way in which the show ended. That was unsatisfying to a large extent for a lot of people. So
made me mad.
You know, maybe fucking actually make your shows worth a shit.
Give a shit about your shows. Give a shit about your shows. Netflix.
God, it is clear that that little golden era of television ended.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It is burnt up somewhere with the film that is explosive that they used in an attempted assassination of Hitler. I don't know. I'm just making bad jokes at this point. Continue on. Ignore me.
Yeah. And you know, what's ironic is that one of the shows that kicked off the golden era of television knew better than to fall into these traps, and yet many of its imitators you can't say the same about, which is of course Breaking Bad, which like maybe not everybody loves it, but that show kind of ushered in the golden era of TV to some
Really?
extent. Like
Mm,
that's when people started to really talk about television in this way different light.
okay, I see what you're saying.
Was like around that time. I would say you could go back a little further and you can say that there were things that came first, like The Wire to some extent, and
I
things
was
like
gonna
that
say
were
The
kind of like
Wire.
pushing us in that direction. But like Breaking Bad definitely changed the way people like talked about, felt about, and made television to a large extent. And what's ironic is that Breaking Bad didn't do what we're talking about. It did not create a zillion mysteries and then fail to solve most of them. In fact, Breaking Bad was famous for just sort of like the director of that show loves to give himself like a weird trap that he had to like then figure out how to end the season. And so he would start every season with some weird dramatic glimpse of the future. And then he used that as like his way to like find a way back home at the end of that season, basically. And so like if you remember like the burnt up plushie from the beginning of season 2, unless I'm mistaken, that falls from the sky when those airplanes hit each other and it falls in the Walt's yard. Like
Yeah,
Vince Gilligan just created that scene with no idea of how he would get there.
that makes sense. I'm not gonna lie.
Rather than creating a bunch of nebulous mysteries in the shadows, he would create like one very obvious mystery out in the open and then solve it. And even the last season does this. Like you have that scene at the very beginning with Walt with the beard, like everything seeming fucking crazy, him having this like high powered gun that he's buying and shit. And then you're like, how do we get there? It's very straightforward. Nothing is like that is most of its imitators don't manage to do anything like that in terms of straightforwardness. It's all nebulous. Let me tell you, before we get out of here, let me tell you what really pissed me off and actually inspired this whole episode. I watched recently I was looking for like a lighthearted mystery show to watch. This is how I ended up watching Murder, She Wrote. But before I got there, I was looking around for a relatively lighthearted mystery show to watch.
A lighthearted mystery show.
Well, I mean, Hey, I know that sounds funny, but a lot of the classic mystery shows are kind of easy watching.
I would suggest Rosemary and Thyme next time.
That one's okay.
I actually like it a lot.
I've seen a few episodes. I've seen a lot of mystery shows.
Fair enough.
But a lot of mystery shows are relatively light watching, just relatively, it's fun, it's stimulating, but it doesn't feel that serious, which is ironic because most of them are about murder. But still, it's just like, you have some whimsical, charismatic detective that just sort of wanders from scene to scene, getting up to trouble. And a lot of mystery shows are kind of just like that to some extent, Yeah. And that's just easy to enjoy, easy to consume television. And so I was just looking for something like that one evening a few weeks ago. And I saw that the Hardy Boys had a modern adaptation. And I thought to myself, surely they won't overthink the Hardy Boys.
They did.
Surely.
I didn't know you had watched that. I've watched it too. I've watched the whole thing. It's not
you watched the whole. I only watched a little, and I was immediately angry.
Welcome to the club. So I have all the books on my shelves, Kennedy. I'm so mad about it.
It's nothing like the books.
It's nothing like the books.
The books were literally, they were a book equivalent of what I'm talking about in terms of just a easy to consume mystery series. There's a mystery, the Hardy Boys are on the case, and you just read through that book. What an interesting story. Wow. You know? What happens in the first episode of the Hardy Boys? It seems like they're starting a mystery. There's like this thing that happens on a boat, and you're like, "Ooh, this is the start of the mystery, right? This weird boat shenanigans." No, fuck you. Most of the episode is about other stuff, and they only reference the boat mystery like one more time, even though that's clearly a big deal.
Once in the entire season do they reference it again. It doesn't make any fucking sense to introduce that scene. And it's the starting scene. Sorry. That whole series has made me mad. Thank you for making me mad today, Kennedy.
I mean, I'm sorry to make you mad, but we got to do it today because this is ridiculous. The fucking Hardy Boys. This should be a show about a couple of kids wandering around with flashlights in the dark in some old guy's mansion that they're not supposed to be in, looking for, clues.
That's like one of the covers. You're describing one of the covers better than one of the episodes could.
Yes, exactly. Like this should be, an older brother carrying around his younger brother in a red rider wagon. Red rider wagon. Can't fucking talk. Red rider wagon. Like pulling them along, and they've got like a dog collar, and there's obviously like a missing dog, and they're like, "Where's the dog?" Like that's what I was expecting when I put on the Hardy Boys.
Yeah. Well, it's not that. I can tell you that. It's a bad place. It's a bad place written by a bad person. I don't know if the person's bad, but all I'm saying is that series did not need to be made. They could have done it. They could have given it to a Japanese animator who did anime, and it would have been better. It would have been a better series because he would have gotten the mysticism behind some of it. And they were like, I don't even know. Like this whole thing, I feel like the Hardy Boys just needs to be left alone. You leave the Hardy Boys alone, Netflix. You leave the Hardy Boys alone, Hulu. You get out of here. You turn your eyes away from them. Don't ever talk to me and my Hardy Boys again.
If anything proves to me that we've gone too far down the rabbit hole of making every goddamn show into a prestige drama, it's that Hardy Boys remake. Like, again, that should have been Scooby-Doo without the dog.
Without the dog. And without the people.
Yeah, like
two of the people.
It should have been just like goofy, slapsticky, occasionally serious, whatever, just boys just wander around solving mysteries, and instead it's just like weird Twin Peaks shit and no actual mystery solving for the most part, and I hate it. I hate it so much. Like I said, it's the proof that we've gone too far. You should not be trying to turn the Hardy Boys into Twin Peaks. You've gone too far.
It's too much. Like, step back, take a look at the drawing board, and erase it. Erase all of it. Just take it all down, throw it in the trash bin, and light a match. And then throw the match into the bin and run. Let the building burn. It'll be okay. The insurance will take care of it. Just go.
Like, what's next? They make a live-action Captain Underpants that's very serious and gritty and dark. Like, fucking, what is the limit? No, it wasn't live action. They made a animated, right? And it was okay.
I think it might have been animated, but like, it'd be hilarious if we got John Candy or somebody to do it.
Like, really, what is the limit at this point? Like, are we gonna have like a gritty drama about Clifford the Big Red fucking dog?
Didn't they do that too?
Maybe.
I think they might have made a live action movie.
Clifford, coming this summer.
I don't want that.
Why is this dog so big and so red? The government needs answers.
I'm gonna need a bigger bowl of water.
But really, what is the fucking limit? Are we gonna have a gritty reboot of Dr. Seuss?
A gritty reboot of Marmaduke.
Gritty reboot of Marmaduke? Gritty reboot of Garfield?
No, Gritty Garfield. Oh,
Gritty
that's
Garfield.
A great rap name. Oh.
That's my rap name. Gritty Garfield.
Gritty Garfo.
Actually, if I was a rapper, my name would be MC Palm Sweaty Mom Spaghetti. Anyway, before my palms
would be
get
MC
too sweaty,
Dad's Linguini.
let's get out of here.
I can't.
Let's
You're
leave.
the one who has control.
Let's run away.
Take us home.
This has been a wonderful time with y'all. Thank you for tuning in to Velvet Butcher Shop. We appreciate you. We are live Monday to Friday at 1 Eastern, and then available forevermore in various forms, audio, video, clips, etc. We appreciate y'all. You can support the show by going to Patreon or Ko-fi/Velvet Butcher Shop, your choice. We will see you tomorrow.
I said bye too soon again.
You did.